Please sit down.
And be humble.
How you doing today?
I'm okay. It could be better. I got a little bit of a headache.
So just a normal day in the life. So, Brit,
Just a
I want
normal
to
day in life.
right. So, Brit, I want to talk to you today about because this has been on my mind before. Kind of how, especially in your case, because I know you worked a lot in school. How did
Mhm.
you specifically deal with being in being working part time, if not full time? I know you did that at one point. Being in school
Mhm.
and also still trying to maintain healthy relationships.
It was hard, yes. One, two. My social life basically non-existent in the first few years of schooling. Um, because I was full time. Um, I was a full time student and a full time employee at a retail store. And so I did that for 3 years while I went to a community college. And then when I transferred to university, I decided not to work because I wanted to be able to actually meet people and try to like make friends. Um, and then um, after that, I started working more part time. Um, and that was much easier to maintain relationships that way. Like working while going to school was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do when it comes to time management. It's made me a better worker now, but at the time, it was a shit show. Honestly, it was a shit show.
What what made it the biggest shit show? Was it the fact that you felt like isolated and you never had time, or was it just the fact that you always feel tired? What was the biggest contributor to the
it, was-
overall
it was
shit show?
it was both of those things. You always feel tired because you're working. You have to create the earliest schedule you could possibly create for school. So you had
Mm,
to take those 8 a.m. classes. Um, I knew people who were taking 7 a.m.s, and I was like, I don't hate myself that much. No, thank you.
okay.
um, can you imagine a 7 a.m. class?
I think I was in an 8 a.m. class the earliest. I can't imagine a 7 a.m. class, especially if you have to commute there and you're not just walking.
Exactly.
That'd be
But
bad.
I knew somebody who took public transit and was taking a 7 a.m. class
Oh, wow.
because they're like, yeah, exactly. That face you're making, exactly how I was making my face.
Yeah, so they would have to wake up like 4, 5 a.m.
I have no
Not
idea how early they had to wake up. It was right after I was done with high school. So we were 18 at the time, and their
early.
mentality was, oh, well, if I can get up early for 7:20 high school, I can get up early for 7 a.m. college class. But the commute to get to a community college through public transit is a lot different than just hopping on your one school bus, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
unless you live super close by to that school and it only takes you one bus or one train to get there. It was going to take you a lot longer than, you know, a public school provided way to get to your place. But anyway, it was both that I was being really tired, and um your other point was, what was your other point?
Really tired or just feeling like you not didn't have enough time.
Yeah, didn't have enough time for anything. Because you have those. My schedule was usually um set up by 8 a.m. was my first class. Then I was done by 1, 2 o'clock, and then I would have an hour to get to my job, and it would take at least 40 minutes to get there by bus, because I had to take two different buses, and that's if it was running on time and running smoothly. So I would start work between 3 and 4 o'clock, and then leave there at midnight. And then after midnight, I would go home, do what homework I could do before completely passing out because of my day, and then waking up and doing it all over again.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes the days were a little easier because, when you're in college, you can construct your schedule where you have only 3 classes Monday through Friday and maybe 2 classes Tuesday and Thursday. But while I was in community college, I had class every day. It was never I was never one of those lucky people who only had classes 2 or 3 times a week. I always had class every single day of the week until my last year of college, I think.
Yeah, because even back in community college, you were still a bio major, correct?
Yeah, I was still a bio
Yeah.
major. I was still
Our
on that
schedule,
pre-med track.
yeah, our schedules for biology are never good. They're always the
No.
labs, everything always gets scrambled, and you end up just having
Mhm.
class 4, if not 5 times a week.
Mhm.
Um, I definitely remember having to deal with that, and and my heart goes out to you for those years you were in school because I worked too, but not to the extent that you worked. I mostly just worked weekends, which was a
Mhm.
drawback for me just because you get done the week of school and you're thinking to yourself, oh, I have this weekend to relax, and then the next day
Mhm.
I would have to get up and go to work. Which, but once again, I was just working part time. You were about that life. I was definitely not. But for me,
I mean,
especially when I
even
moved on,
oh no, continue. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, especially for me, the biggest thing though was, and it wasn't really a big deal in college. It became a bigger deal in professional school when I moved
Mhm.
on to go to pharmacy school. I did find it was a problem because, as you know, I commute an hour down to pharmacy school,
Mhm.
um, and so what I found was that I would take an hour to get there. I would be there most of the day, come home. So I would usually leave at around 7 or 8 a.m. depending on the day, if I had 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. classes, and depending on the
Mhm.
traffic. And I would get home around like 5 or 6. And,
Mhm.
most of the time I would still try to work out in the mornings to take care of myself. So I'm really running off of 5 or 6 hours of sleep, maybe sometimes 4. I try not to do 4 because was my breaking point. Like 4 is my limit. If I get 4 hours of
Mhm.
sleep, I'm not making it through the day. I'm not making it through the day. Um,
Mhm.
so I really try my best to at least have 5 hours. But it was taxing, and from
Mhm.
being tired all the time. The biggest thing you notice when you're tired is your ability to get agitated. It turns up so
Very.
quickly.
Yes.
You have to remind yourself that there is no reason for you to pop off on somebody
Mhm.
because they didn't really do anything. You're just
Mhm.
tired and you're upset. And
Mhm.
most of the time, the other person just becomes a vessel for you to project your anger, your frustration, your tiredness on.
Mhm.
And you want
Mhm.
to try to avoid to do that. Because what
Mhm.
I find is that a lot of times I would end up looking like a dummy because here I am popping off on somebody who didn't even deserve it. And just
Mhm.
also just certain things you notice yourself overindulging in because you're so stressed out and so tired. And it's
Mhm.
really difficult to try to be healthy and keep up a healthy relationships with your people around you if they're not supportive and understanding of what you're going through at the same time. Because some people will make it seem that what you feel or your struggles are not a big deal. I remember the
Mhm.
other day we were talking, I was telling you, I was feeling I was tired, but I've been more tired. And you had to remind
Mhm.
me, um, what did you say? You reminded me that it's okay to admit I was tired. Do you remember what you said that day?
I don't remember my exact words, but I remember the conversation, and you were saying, "Oh yeah, well, it's been worse, but yes, you might have like a time where you've been in a worse situation, but you shouldn't discredit or devalue what you're feeling right now because you've had worse. Like that shouldn't be your measure of, oh, I'm okay because I've been through worse. If you're going through a hard time, then you're going through a hard time. Like you don't have to compare yourself to your previous hard times.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's
100%.
that's gonna like I don't know, that would be so taxing on your mental health for me. Like if I was going through a rough time and be like, "Oh, well, I've had worse things that happened to me in my life." That doesn't mean that what's going on with you right now is okay or that it shouldn't be talked about
Hmm.
or you shouldn't, be feeling whatever you're feeling. So yeah,
Yeah,
no.
and I get that. And it's but it's difficult when you're raised in a household when with the mentality I was raised with, where
Mm,
it's kind of and it's bad because I find that now that I'm in this position, I'm in this professional school, I see
mm,
other people like me, and I realize there's a certain type of personality that
mm,
makes it to like this level. There is a certain type of personality that makes it to this level, and those personalities are not always constructive for their own health. I remember a classmate telling me, "No one, no one cares. Work harder." And it was a,
yikes.
it was a quote. It was a quote, but he has a point because that's what I grew up pretty much with the mentality of it. It was never said in that
Mm,
fashion, but my dad
mm,
worked hard. My dad worked all the time. And so
mm,
I also grew up working hard. Now, seeing my dad burn himself out, I know better and when to pull myself back because nothing is
mm.
worth being that exhausted. But
Yeah.
I still do carry that mentality with me.
Mm,
And sometimes when I talk to you, it helps me catch myself from falling back into that trap because I have a tendency to slide around and kind of trick myself into thinking you're just complaining over nothing. You know,
mm,
it's kind
mm.
of that horrible American mentality that we have that you need to work until
Until
you're
you're dead in the ground.
yeah,
Oh,
you're
that
crippled
whole
to the bone.
or that saying, "Oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead." No, I want to sleep now.
Right,
What
right,
is sleep gonna do for me if I'm dead? I can't enjoy it then because I'll be dead.
exactly. And but it's just kind of working through that mentality and these very harmful mentalities that we have as a culture, as a community, to work so
Yeah,
hard.
for
Like
sure.
I was thinking about this when I was talking to some of my older friends. They're not really that much older than me. I think one's in his mid 40s, one is in his late 30s. But um, I guess if it's more than ten.
That's pretty older. That's pretty old.
But my oldest brother's like 70 something, so you know what I mean? They're not really old. They're just a little bit, they're just a year or two ahead of me,
They're
you feel me?
That's not a year or two ahead of you. That's
It
like
basically is. Like
50 years your senior.
no, I'm telling you, if you do the
That's a
math,
grandfather,
you carry the one, divide by two, it's there. It's really there. It's really
This
there. You're
must be
tripping.
some of that new math that they were talking about in The Incredibles too, because I don't I don't know what this new math is.
No, it's there. It's there. It's definitely there. But when I talk to
Nah.
them, a lot of them, especially the ones with children, I notice that
Mhm.
they do work, but they try to spend as much time with their children as possible at the same time. And if you think about it, if you're working 40 hours a week, especially if none of those hours can be remote, and I think that's the one good thing about COVID-19 is that it is forcing some companies to change to remote. Because one of my fears thinking about becoming a parent one day is if I'm in an office somewhere that takes me an hour to drive there, an hour to come back, and I'm working 4 hours a week, how many hours do I actually get to spend with my kid during the weekday? Like three, from 6 to 9, or probably really for me 6 to 8, because by 9 o'clock, I'm like, I'm leaning, and
Your kid's probably leaning by 8 o'clock too, depending
yeah,
on
we
the
both
kid's age.
we both leaning, bro. Like we rappers, and so it
We
makes
both
me
have a bedtime of 8:30.
exactly. So, and it makes me think about that time that you're just missing away from your kid, or the time you're missing away from your significant other, or whatever, that you could be spending time with, because we have this mentality that working 5 days a week for 40 hours is something that's healthy. In fact, if right now it looks like before we went into Corona,
Mhm.
it looked like we were pushing to working even more, because as you know, a lot of jobs have overtime. That's not quote unquote mandatory, but is mandatory,
Yes,
and we're not
I
even gonna
do.
yeah, we're not even
We're
gonna
not
get
gonna
in,
get into that.
we're not
That's a
even gonna
whole
get into that,
conversation.
or the conversation about how tipping culture in America and how we have to pay and how we have to tip waiters because we can't just pay them a regular wage, or we can't really
Mhm.
tip. How is it that like 30s or 30, 40 years ago, you could be a milkman and send your kids to college, but now if you work two jobs, you can't even pay for your kid to go to college. Does that make sense?
The system
Right.
is fucked. The system is
Right.
fucked.
You used to be able to be a milkman. We have come to a system where you are working yourself to the bone to barely
Mm,
be able to feed your kids, let alone be able to actually progress them to somewhere where they can realistically be able to take care of their own kids, you know?
mhm,
And that is
mhm,
a very weird place to be in right now, you know? Um,
mhm,
it's something that I often think about, especially when you think about work, home, and being a student balance. Because essentially, you're doing all this to try to guarantee yourself a better future for you, yourself, and your kids. And it's kind of fucked
mhm.
if you're sitting here doing all this, and then the cycle just
Repeats
perpetuates itself.
itself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If the cycle just repeats itself, you still have your kid doing the same thing. And some people are fans of that, as though if I struggle, my kid should struggle too, which doesn't make sense to me.
Oh my
Like, have you ever
god, I
heard
don't
that
understand that
mentality?
mentality. Yeah, I don't understand it. Um,
Man, I
it's
got
something that
stabbed in the
I
face once. My kid
You
should
can
be able to
stab
take it.
too. You can
Yeah.
be stabbed too. It's okay. But I've
Man up.
definitely I've grown up hearing that, like, oh, I've
Mm,
done X, Y, and Z while I was your age. You should be able to do X, Y, and Z too. But everything is not for everyone. And what my whole working full time while being a student full time, I would never wish that for anybody because at the end of the day, some aspects obviously have to suffer. Like my grades weren't as good as they could have been. You
mhm,
know, the relationships that I formed might could have become stronger than quicker. Like, yes, the
mhm,
people that were in my life then are still in my life now, and our relationships have gotten better. And due to a lot of work, and not just work on the relationship but working on myself and the way that I communicate with others, like that's
mhm,
something that I didn't think about, and that wasn't something that I really put effort into, because my main focus was, oh, I need to be able to work to pay for school, and if I don't work, then I can't pay for school, and if I can't pay for school, then I won't get a better job. And you know what I mean, like my focus was really on those two things, when at the end of the day, I really also should have put as much effort into my support system, because the people that are going to be there for you when you're having those shitty days where you might have failed a test, might have gotten yelled at work, who are you going to go talk to about ththose things?
yeah,
Um, eh,
100%. Because having a support system, like we were even talking about previously, especially when you're in a place where where you're working, you're at home, and you're going through difficult school times, that support system is
mhm,
what you're going to fall back on. And if it's not
mhm,
there, you're going to find yourself falling. I just have a friend who went to med school, and I randomly just texted him because I know how he is, and I wanted to make sure he was doing well. As considering we're very isolated right now, but for him to focus, he needs to be able to have a space where he can study. And he was
mhm,
telling me, and he was doing okay, but as okay as what a person who's isolated can do. But he really
mhm,
appreciated me just reaching out and checking up on him. And that's
mhm.
the other thing people don't understand. Like, relationships are work, you know?
Yeah, they are. Hmm.
I think people get caught up into, even if your relationship is perfect, it's still going to be work.
There's no such thing as perfect.
There's no such thing as perfect. I I think people get caught up in those love songs that are like, I still feel the same fire as you for you as the for day we first met. But I'm gonna be real with you. Even if you have those moments where you feel that fire still, and you have that fire, that's great. But you are not gonna like anybody 100% of the time. I have yet to meet a person I like 100% of the time.
Ditto.
I have yet to be the person I like 100% of the time. And so I think even the way in our culture, where it comes to movies, TV shows, social media, we show relationships. We only saw the very pretty aspects of it. You know,
Mm,
when relationships and we're going to discuss this more in another podcast, but relationships are a lot of work, you know.
Mhm.
It takes you being able to communicate. It takes you being able to be upset with the person, angry with the person. And the other fact is that not everybody is going to be someone you're going to want in your support system, you know. Um,
Mhm.
some people you're going to think are cool or good or like helpful for you. Sometimes they're not going to be the people that stick around, and that's
Mhm.
okay, you know,
Mhm.
because trying to make people stay in your support system is trying to make your relationship forced to be work.
Mhm.
I think we can both say that makes it worse.
As a person who has been in a long-term relationship since for most of their college, undergrad, and professional school time, is that something that you struggle to deal with or maintain? Because you also do work, yes, you work weekends, but just like you said earlier, that's like your quote unquote free time. That's when you're not at school because you do go to school 5 days a week most semesters,
Every
pharmacy
semester,
school.
I have yet to
Yeah.
have a day off.
So, like you
I,
work most weekends too. You have a very strong family connection and you have strong family relationships. How do you balance all of those things?
honestly, I feel like I'm not the perfect person to ask because part of it is me understanding that I'm going to fuck up. But my thing is that as long as I am doing well enough in school, I'm willing
Mhm.
to give up some of it. So, okay, maybe my GPA won't be a 3.5. Maybe it'll be like a 2.75, 3.0. But if that means I can trade some of those GPA points for spending more time with people, I'm willing to do that.
Mhm.
Because it's about what matters to you, you know. And my
Mhm.
relationships at the end of the day matter more to me. As long as I get the thing I am striving for, that's fine. I can take my
Mhm.
time about it in a
Mhm.
reasonable fashion, of course. But
Mhm.
I'm willing to trade off, and that's what a lot of that stuff boils down to. It's a trade off. You know,
Mhm.
you deciding you can go to this event and not this event. You're going to spend your time here, but not here. And sometimes
Mhm.
I'll pick, and 1 week I'll spend maybe some time with my family. Maybe sometimes I'll do something with my girlfriend. Maybe sometimes I should say significant other. Power to the people. Anyway, I spend time with my significant other, or
Mhm.
I'll spend time with my significant other's family. But I
Mhm.
can't do all those things all the time. I have to pick and choose and kind of set up a schedule. And as you know, I have calendars, especially when I'm in school. I have a bunch of calendars, and there are
Mhm.
always events on the calendar, so I don't forget anything happening. I can't forget anything
Mhm.
happening, and I always make
Mhm.
time to at least have gaps to make sure I can always get some sleep if I need it, or
If you need it.
I mean, I always need it,
It's a
but
side it's a side necessity.
sleep sleep is weakness at this point. Like sleep didn't become weakness to me. If I needed to sleep, I was always a bad kid, so I sleep in lecture. I don't mind. I'll leave lecture and sleep. I mean, I don't encourage anyone to do that, but I would sleep in lecture, and because I was just tired. I've always been tired while in school,
Mhm.
and it makes me think about it. It just at the end of the day, it's about trade off and being able to pick and choose when you do things and how you do things because you can't always be a part of everything, but there are certain things you can do within reason, you know? Um,
Mhm.
I think from my college to now, I was single for maybe like 3 months, if that. I'm trying to remember. I had, I had a girlfriend in high school, which I dated in college, I think, until like going into my second year. And then I met my current significant other my second year, and I've been dating her since. So I think I was single for maybe 2 3 months. So I mean, so I haven't really been single really for more than 3 months since I was what 16, 15, 16, which is even more
I don't know.
interesting. I mean, you should
You gotta
know.
tell me.
You should know at this point, as well as me knowing.
How?
I don't know.
I haven't known you. I didn't know
You know
teenage
me,
you.
but you knew me. You've known me for a while now.
Yes, I've known you for a while now, but I don't know all of your
Oh, my history. You
past,
don't know my
all your
story.
history.
You don't know
I
my
don't know
story.
all of your history.
That's what they're doing, people. If you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best.
Oh my god, that makes me think of that Gucci Mane meme.
Gucci,
Yes, remember
big
Gucci
Guwap.
Mane? He had like there was a picture of him when he was overweight. He wasn't even like that overweight. And I was just like, they did this man dirty.
Gucci man, big Guwap is an inspiration to us all. Let us strive to be more like big Guwap. Let the congregation rest. The defense rests. Everybody rests. He's an idol, really. He's the Shakespeare of our generation. Big Guwap. I am not joking when I say any of that, by the way. I hope everyone knows I'm being 1,000% serious. Um, but also,
um, I can't have an opinion. I don't really know him like that.
yeah. But also going back, still, at the end of the day, I think school is ghetto. I think school is ghetto, and it's not a necessity. If you There's always trade school and other options. If you don't want to go to school, school doesn't have to be for everyone. I think one of the crimes in public education is some of the schools, depending on what county or district, or I'm not sure how different places cut up the schools, but they don't really focus on the fact that trade school exists and you can learn a
Mm,
variety of trades and make good money. Electrician,
yeah,
plumber,
you really
those are just the
can.
big favorite ones. But there's a number of trades that you can learn within a couple of years and make money while you learn them if you're someone who's just better with their hands and who doesn't want to go to college, and that's perfectly fine.
Mm,
You can
mm-hmm.
feed a family and send your kid to college being a plumber. But I often feel like our education system isn't meant to really prepare people, for the real life.
Oh, at all. It's not. You don't learn about how important it is to establish credit for yourself. I
Mhm,
didn't get my first credit card until I was 21.
mhm.
And and at that age is when you're kind of in the market to like try to rent something if you're trying to live off campus or trying to buy a car or anything, trying to get a loan. If you haven't established credit after if you have no established credit, nobody's going to give you anything. Nobody teaches you about taxes. Nobody teaches you about how to fill out new employment forms.
My my guy, they don't even teach you how to fill out the FAFSA.
No, they don't teach you how to fill out the FAFSA. Like there are so many things that need to be implemented in the school system, but that's like a different conversation because we're
Not
talking about
even
college.
but it's about school still. It is about the fact that the system itself is not putting us in a position where we feel prepared to handle life. And I think the worst part about the culture when it comes to this is that not only are you not prepared for life, but then you're thrown to the dogs. And if you don't have a game plan, you're treated like crap. Most if you finish high school and people ask you what do you want, what you're gonna do, and you don't have an answer, you're treated like the black
Mhm.
sheep. When in reality, they haven't prepared you to have an answer. They've only prepared you to get from first grade to second grade, third grade to fourth grade to fifth grade to sixth grade. And if your POC is even worse for you, bro, because you probably don't really know the history of your people and how they've been systematically holding your people down. But that's a
Mhm.
different topic for a different day. You know,
Yeah, it
because
is.
especially because a lot of people think that um, black people specifically are in a position they are because of their own quote unquote decisions, and they don't know about things like redlining or the
Mhm.
Tuskegee experiments, like we talked about, or a whole host
Mhm.
of other things, the move
Mhm.
bombings, the massacre in Tulsa, um,
Mhm.
just a number of things that they aren't really aware of, and they're not aware of their environment in relation to
I
them.
didn't know about these things until I was well into my 20s.
Yeah.
And not even well into my 20s. I can say like up until 6 months ago.
It's insane
You
how much
know.
been the one good thing about all these riots and everything. In addition to just raising awareness, it's given us the ability to have information shared. Because a bunch of stuff I didn't know, I just started learning. I'd never learned about redlining.
Mhm.
I was in advanced placement classes for history since I was a freshman, and I've never heard about redlining. But I learned about
Mhm.
FDR's New Deal, and during FDR's New Deal is when redlining happened. So it would
Mhm.
just seem convenient that the education system just skipped over that part of the FDR's New Deal when that was happening concurrently. Um,
Mhm.
but that's all to say that it's not easy because school makes it seem like college is your only option when it's really not, you know?
That's
And then
true.
if you do decide college is for you and you end up having to work as so many people have to, you have to understand that what are you trying to get out of your experience? Because
Hmm.
if you're trying to only minimize your debt, you're gonna have to sacrifice a lot of your social interactions. You know, your social life
Yeah,
is just going to
you
suffer
do.
if you decide you want to have the full college experience, and you're gonna end up with a good amount of debt unless you are able to get a lot of scholarships. And to be quite frank with you, I went to school with a bunch of people, but I don't really know that many people who had that much money worth of scholarships. Do you?
Not at the school that we went to, no. I
Not at
didn't really
all.
know many people with scholarships that were like paying their entire way. Um, but you're right. The year that I took off
Hmm.
um, from work was because I wanted to have the full college experience. I decided to live on campus, the
Hmm.
whole 9 yards. And I ended up struggling financially. So, something's got to give.
Exactly. Something's always got to give. Because
Yeah.
that's what I found. Because I had a friend who
Mm-hmm.
he was working and he was in school, and his home life, and he was living on campus, but his home life was always kind of turbulent. And
Mm-hmm.
usually he could deal with his home life and work fine when he was in high school, or school fine, because he was only dealing with two of those things. You throw that third
Mm-hmm.
thing in the mix, and it got ugly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But you know,
Yeah,
things are better now for that person.
that's good. I mean, when it came to like my home life while I was in community college and working full time, my relationships with my brothers and my mom weren't as strong as they used to be. Like we didn't spend quality time together. And for me, like that's the way that I feel close to people. That's
Hmm.
my love language.
Hmm.
I am a quality time person.
Hmm.
And so I started feeling really disconnected from them.
Hmm.
Um, and it takes time to reestablish those relationships.
It
It
does.
takes time to, because you forget how to talk to people,
Yeah.
even people that you've known your whole life. You forget exactly how to maneuver conversation with them, because every conversation you have with a different person is gonna look and sound different.
Yeah.
And so that was something that I did really struggle with. And the social life with friends, I had people in classes that I spoke to, but I'd never really spent too much time outside of school with anybody,
Hmm.
except maybe like once or twice a month. And that was if, fingers crossed, two or three of our schedules ended up commingling, and we could get one day together. But I totally get that.
Yeah, and now that we're talking about especially like home life, I remember
Mm-hmm.
my first year of college was actually my worst year of college because I was commuting from home, and
Mm-hmm.
I was overextending myself at home because when I'm at my household, I'm known as the getter doner. Something needs to get done.
Yeah.
I'm the guy, I'm
Ask
the one.
him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's the one who's gonna make sure stuff gets done. And so I
Mm-hmm.
was trying to help take care of my siblings. I was commuting to college, and I was
Mm-hmm.
just falling apart. I was just falling
Mm-hmm.
apart. It was so bad. My
Mm-hmm.
mother had to force me to go live on campus, and quite frankly, it's one of the best things that she's ever forced me to do. Because if it wasn't for that, I probably would have. I don't know how long I would have been in school for. I don't know how I would have gone through. Because it's
Mm-hmm.
just my nature for me to want to overextend myself. Because, like I said, I get the
It
same.
is.
Because I said it before, I get the same nature from my dad,
Mm-hmm.
who is who is a workaholic. And
Mm-hmm.
even though I'm not as bad, I still slip into the same tendencies because that's my father and that's
Mm-hmm.
the behavior I grew up watching. And when you
Mm-hmm.
have a behavior you grow up watching, you're going to end up um, emulating it, regardless of
Mm-hmm.
if you're conscious of it or not. And you have
Mm-hmm.
to be careful when it comes to that type of thing. Um, you know
Mm-hmm.
that you watch out and try not to do it. But for me, I have a bad tendency of falling into that trap of overstretching myself and working myself a bit harder than I should. I always have to remind myself not to. I remember I was in school actually, and this brings up another topic. And I have classmates who were just like, who, when they were asked how did they cope and how did they do better in school and deal with the schedule that we had, they just said to me, they just learned. They said to the person in our school who was interviewing us, they just learned to get up earlier and stay up later. So basically, like I said, sleep is for the weak. That was essentially their answer. Sleep is for the weak.
Yeah.
They
I
they
I
they
hate that
verbally
response.
they verbally admitted to just taking essentially less care of themselves because that's what we have to do to keep up. And it shows because they are substantially better than me at school. Like it shows because they spend
But
more time with it. I don't. I choose
yes,
to
you're
go
spending more
back.
time with it, but at the end of the day, like, is your mental health and your well-being as a person, is all that sacrifice worth it? Like, I couldn't imagine putting, because like if I'm a wreck, if like my mental health is a wreck and me as a person is a wreck, nothing around me is getting done. I don't care how important something is.
Mhm.
Yes, I'll do my best to get it done, but it would never be as good as if I was in a solid state of mind,
Yeah. No,
and
I
if I had gotten that full night of sleep.
and I 100% agree with you. I think that happens to them too. But as I had said previously, it's a certain personality type.
Yeah.
It's a certain personality type, that seems to attract certain professions. Um,
Mm.
it's that's what I've noticed, and it seems that that type of person is willing to work themselves to the damn near the
To the
brink of death.
bone.
Yeah, to the bone, to the brink of death. The American dream: work yourself to the death so you can barely afford to send your kids to school and pay off your debt.
Have you ever been, because while I was working, I ended up working full time again last university, but luckily I was only part-time student then. So didn't have class every day, but I did work 5 days a week. Um, and I would complain, as people do, to people at my workplace about, some exam coming up or some project or whatever, and how I might not have gotten that the as much sleep as I would have liked the night before. And a constant thing that was always said to me while I was at the hospital was, "Oh, you're young, you'll be fine." And it's just like, I don't care how young I am. At the end of the day, I am still a person, and a person needs sleep. And so, do you ever have people say that, like, "Oh, well, you're young, you'll bounce back," like, "Oh, you'll be fine because you're only in your 20s." "Oh, I couldn't do that now because I'm in my 50s." It's just
Yeah,
like,
that whole
it's like,
expression.
okay,
That whole expression, "I'm not a young spring chicken." You ever heard that? I'm not a young spring chicken
yes.
anymore. Yeah, yeah. When
I
it
could
is,
say the same thing. My knees hurt when I wake up in the morning. I am not a spring chicken either.
I'm pretty tall, so my knees hurt after I was like 15. So it'd be like, it's not even a thing for me because after 15, my knees were not what they were. Let's just put it that way.
because
I'm just
because you're stupid tall.
just
That
because of
makes
my
sense.
height. I'm not even stupid tall. My brother and my siblings are taller than me. I'm not stupid tall. She's lying. It was all lies. I love that meme.
It's not
I'm sorry. Do you have anything else you want to say about the subject?
final thoughts. Um if you want to try the work homeschool life balance thing, it's not for everybody, and it's not something that's recommended for anyone because of how stress inducing it is. But if you want to try it because you feel like you can handle it, by all means try it and see how it works for you. My twin brother, he tries to work and go to school. His work schedule is a little different than most. He would work overnight and then try to go to school in the morning, and that kind of schedule really started putting a damper on him, to the point where he decided that it wasn't just the job that he didn't like. He didn't really like working for the company either. So he decided to leave that and focus on school, and he's been doing much better. It's only been a summer semester, but
Mm.
um, and he was still doing very well in school then too, but his his mental health started taking a toll, and then he started being a lot more tired than he should be. um so everybody try do what you think is best for you, but if you feel like you're struggling, really reevaluate what you're doing in your life, and see and prioritize what's most important to you. That's my advice.
And I think the biggest thing is to don't feel like you're forced to do anything. Don't feel like you have to work
Yeah.
while you're in school. Don't feel like you have to go to school. There are
Hmm.
other paths, and if you want to work and make money and still gain some type of professional
Hmm.
acknowledgement, like I said, trade school is always a good option. You can work as an
Hmm.
electrician and get some money. You can work as a apprentice plumber and get some money, and still get some type of certification out of it. So don't feel
Hmm.
like you are in a position where you have to do something.
Yeah.
You always have options. There's always an option. It's just a matter of how you choose to go about it, and your
Yeah.
choices become your choices. Well, your choices aren't your choices alone. It's also an influence of your environment, but that's a different conversation. Anyway,
There
fuck the
was
system.
something else that there there was something else that we didn't actually talk about,
But
was the mindset that people have to finish college within that 4-year time frame, which is not true at all. I didn't finish college for I it took me 6 years, you
bro,
know?
I
Like,
barely finished college in 4 years.
it it took
Barely.
it took me 6 years, and I had this professor who asked me one day, like, what my career goals were. And at the time, I was still struggling to figure out what they were. And I was telling her how I really just wanted to finish school and move on to the next thing. And she was just like, Brittany, why are you so like gung ho on moving on to the next thing? And I was just like, well, I'm so and so age. And she was just like, okay, well, I didn't finish my undergrad till I was 32, and here she's PhD, she's teaching university, and I'm just like, wow, I would have never guessed that. And like I said in the last episode, things will come to you when it's your time. And so if you ever feel like you need to slow something down like school, I am a big believer of, managing what you can manage and don't ever overextend yourself. So that's something that I would like to add.
Thank you for
Okay.
listening to Humble Podcast. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Podcast Humble. Share your thoughts, reactions, and experiences. We love hearing from you guys. We'll discuss some of the good ones that we see or the bad ones, depending on how horrendous they are. You can also email us at humblepodcast@protonmail.com. Any way you want to communicate with us, we love to hear from everyone. Is that it, Brett?
Yep. We would love to hear from all of you.
Okay, great.
Um, did you stop it?
I'm stopping it now.
Stop.